All right, welcome to another episode of the vetting process. Today we have with us State Representative Natalie Higgins. It's great to have you here today.
Josh, I'm so glad to join you. Thank you for inviting me.
Of course. So I guess the first question is for just tell us a bit about yourself and what you do.
So I'm the state representative for the 4th Worcester District, and I'm one of the community in its entire. My district is entirely the city of Leominster. So every day, I get to represent the city of Leominster, that folks have access to the programs and resources at the state level that they need, and pass good legislation that supports.
So my second question here is, what initially got you into the world of politics?
Yeah, so I met then State Rep Jen Flanagan. She went on to become senator, and then she's now a cannabis control commissioner. And it has been a fantastic learning opportunity that it can play in our lives, because for my family, right, we didn't always have. I grew up living with my grandparents, right, because my parents had a hard time figuring out how to afford housing, that family safety net. And for me, it's always been about how do we make sure that the government is for everyone, all of our residents' basic needs are met, right? I think that government should be a helpful resource in our lives. And for so many folks, they don't experience government more accessible. How do I make it easier to reach me? And numbers every week. And we've even done them virtually through these Zooms, so that we don't miss government hours, right? Like 9 to 5 or 8 to 4 are not accessible for so many of our community members. So making sure 9 to
5. Yeah, so I guess that within itself kind of leads into the next question I had, which is how is the pandemic that we're in right now, how has that affected your work?
On the House floor, working with my colleagues to pass legislation. It's just not safe to do so. Because there's 160 formal session, we could have 200 people on the House floor working to get legislation passed, between the court officers, the clerk, and so we're passing legislation at home. We enacted special rules, emergency rules during this, work remotely and cast our votes from our homes. So for the next 3 days, that's what I'm going to be doing. I would let a lot of folks drop into our office to get help. And so while we put my cell phone number, worry that a lot of folks who need to access my office aren't sure how to do so when we're working remotely.
Yeah.
So there's just so much need out there.
Absolutely. And possibly leading into that, I'm not quite sure. This is actually a question my mom asked me to ask you. Can you explain for the people at home what a gateway city is and how that affects your work?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so Leominster is a gateway city. So it's actually a legal term. Just 20-something communities that have lower than average median household income prices. So because of that, we are small cities, basically the size of Worcester or smaller. Boston is not for help, right? Because we're urban, we have lower income residents, we can't raise the money from our residents, example, like other communities can. And that's one of the biggest ways that we fund our public education. And so that's one of the other things why it's important. And my hope is overall that Leominster, we're lucky that we're kind of one of the better performing gateway cities. We're kind of at the top where I hope that we won't be a gateway city and we won't need that extra help from the state, that we will be able to move our community taxes. Our own tax revenue is going to support the needs of our community and be able to educate our kids well, staff all of our, tell them we get some extra help from the state.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. And another question I had was, this was actually a question I added relatively recently. You were endorsed by like the Massachusetts Voters for Animals, I believe the title is of that sort of organization. And so do you think that animal cruelty and mistreatment of animals is a large problem in the state of Massachusetts? And what have you done as state rep to protect animals, farm or domestic? And like how have you sort of introduced that kind of legislation?
Yeah. Yeah. So I have a prevent the sale of puppies and kittens in retail stores. Most of the industry has moved away from this because the only to fill that is with puppy mills, right? Like these really mass breeders, the home breeders or small breeders that are here locally, but all of our retail stores that still sell puppies, and they source them from these large breeders out of the state. And it's really hard for us to be able to monitor that. I'm working on, really proud to have been working on, but I'm working with Welfare Caucus because I think we need to focus on this and kind of pool our energy for those of us who file legislation in this area back in law school. And I co-chaired the Animal Legal Defense Fund when I was a student at Northeastern. I rescued my cat, who was a very, very sprightly 17 years old and had since I was in middle school. I think it's really important that we lift this up and we talk about this work to protect animals in the Commonwealth.
Absolutely. And another thing that I saw sort of on your website, I think, and like just overall in your campaign media was talk about mental health awareness and advocating for mental health care as well as actual health care. How have you as state rep advocated for like awareness and proper care for mental health?
Yeah, so I've worked with some former education on integrating with physical health education, right? This idea that if we mandate physical education, then we're going to reduce the stigma around mental health. And then the other piece is looking at legislation that increases Central and Western Mass, where it might be harder to find a provider. It's often harder to find a provider for young people, especially, or how hard it was to find mental health professionals that work with youth. But also a big piece is mental health care gets paid out at a lesser rate by our insurance companies. We've come a long way in making sure that telehealth is available, that there's a priority for mental health services, and that the providers are being paid the same rate, or seeing someone over a video chat or an audio chat, especially for folks who are seniors or and they can't video stream. So my hope is we're working on keeping that around. There has been a lot of resistance, but for mental health care, and for talk therapy, this is actually makes it much more accessible. Going to keep their appointments and keep their relationship with their mental health provider.
Yeah, absolutely. And also on your website, you talk about, I believe it's pronounced phenom and well-funded higher education. Why is funding higher education, such as college and stuff like that, important to you?
Yeah, so I'm the first in my family to go to college. I'm very thankful for the opportunities that back in the late 80s when I was born, debt-free public higher education was a reality in Massachusetts. Save up enough money to be able to pay your tuition and fees, even at UMass Amherst, even at the top university. Today, hours a week to be able to cover your tuition and fees. Never mind your housing, never mind your food, never mind your for students to be enrolled full time, and for students to be able to spend the time that they need to be legislation, a variety of bills. One of ours that has gotten the furthest this session, and fingers crossed we'll be able to, it'll give the Attorney General's office some more teeth to go after bad student loan servicers. It's really almost 1 million student loan borrowers with $35 billion in debt. That makes a huge impact on our economy, right? Burdened by that student debt. And so we're looking for solutions to make sure that low-income families can access college without taking on any debt, and that we introduced a new piece of legislation for essential workers, making sure that they have an opportunity to go to at least 1 year of may address some of the systemic disparities in our higher education system, which may finish on time. We're giving the same grant, no matter if you go to Mount Wachusett, Pittsburgh State, or UMass Amherst. If you have a lot of responsibilities on your plate and you're going to a community college and you also have to worry about for how to pay for your housing, we want to make sure that we're giving you some extra help to be able to enroll full time and finish that degree.
Absolutely. And so, next question here. You did a lot of volunteer work before you became state rep. Out of all of the volunteer work you did, what would you say you are the most proud of?
My work as a rape crisis counselor, the staff teen counselor, and got hired by the organization, but I started as a volunteer in college. I continued after really bringing some equity and lifting up the voices of sexual violence survivors in our community. I'm really proud of that work, and I'm proud of all of the information and training and resources that have helped me be able to pass some really, really spectacular legislation.
Yeah, and so as a state representative, what would you say the largest struggle has been doing that, and what do you think is the most rewarding part of being state rep?
So the constant struggle is time management, right? That we want to solve, and not enough time to take on every single one. So trying to figure out what are those have some meaningful impact, that I understand them really, really well, and that I have stories to share. Equation, but it's those personal stories that really move folks to action. The most rewarding it didn't take calling your state rep to get your unemployment claim fixed. Right now, that's the COVID-19 state of emergency. I remind folks all the time who call me who say, I don't want to bother you, but I'm having, all of our time is precious. And if folks in Leominster are struggling on hold with a state agency, and if that's one of the ways that I can use the power of my position to like make sure that state government is working better for folks, and then if I get enough calls about the same issue, we get an idea about something maybe that's systemic, one of the agencies that we can alert the governor's office and try to get a fix. And if we can't get a fix through the executive legislation to make sure that this program is working and meeting the folks that it needs to meet.
Yeah, and I think my final real question here is so you're young, especially for a politician. Do you have any aspirations in the future for like higher office?
What could you just a higher office? But what was the intro to that question?
Sorry, can you say that one more time? I think it.
Oh, could you just repeat the question? I only caught a little bit of it.
So as someone who is especially young for a politician, do you have any aspirations for higher office? Do you plan to seek any other offices?
I am very, very happy where I am, and I think the House is a unique place to be, right? With 160 members, it's a really important and find allies and figure out how to work together. That being said, like I'll never say never, right? And I'm able to pass good legislation. I'm really thankful for the opportunity to continue to represent Leominster. For me, that we're making movement on debt-free higher education, right? I think that that's how we move Leominster out of gateway city status to all of our residents to pursue higher education, no matter what that looks like, whether it's a four-year liberal arts degree or an advanced training certificate. You deserve to have access to that without taking on significant. And so as long as I'm continuing to get to do that work and lift up the voice of sexual and domestic violence survivors and I'm happy to do that, and I'm going to continue to look for opportunities where I can make impact in those two policy areas.
That's a great answer. Finally, I guess to wrap up this episode, I have a little bit of a lightning round here. I have 8 different sort of topics, and I have 8 topics here, and in 2 sentences or less, I want your views on that topic. So topic number 1 is climate change.
Sure. We need bold solutions.
Climate number 2 is women's right to choose.
We need to pass the Roe Act in Massachusetts.
Topic number 3, immigration.
There's a Safe Communities Act and the Family and Work Mobility Act, both of which we're trying really hard to get to the level, given that we can't change immigration policy at the state level.
Topic number 4, police reform.
So I'm hopeful that we can actually have some come together and understand that we want the same goal to address the truly bad actors, but solutions that are going to allow us to do that.
And sort of on that same topic, the Black Lives Matter movement.
That we need to be looking for ways to address systemic part of our community. And for me, a lot of that has been access to high quality education from pre-K through higher.
LGBT plus rights.
Members of the LGBTQ caucus, but we can't be comfortable with massive. There's still discrimination happening in our communities, and we need to lift up particularly young voices and empower LGBTQ so that they can have a seat at the table.
Universal health care.
Massachusetts has been a leader on healthcare access. No one should, or our lack of health. COVID-19 has really exposed how dire the situation is. Making single payer healthcare a reality in the US.
And this is arguably the hardest question I've had on this entire interview. Which is the best flavor of ice cream?
Anything vegan Ben and Jerry's, because it's delicious.
That's a great answer. And I guess that wraps up all the questions I had for you. Thank you so much for coming on and speaking a little bit.
Josh, thanks so much for taking the time. So excited to see all of the videos that you record and keep holding us accountable.
Absolutely. So that's been that. Thank you so much. And I guess I'll see everyone in the next episode.